this joint meeting of the Pension Subcommittee and Pension Board. Item number 1, can I have the Sederunt and apologies for the Pension Subcommittee?
Thank you, Chair. We've got eight members of the Pension Subcommittee present this morning. Councillors Carruthers and Councillor Ronnie currently not present.
Item number 2, the Sederunt and apologies for the Pension Board.
Thank you, Chair. We've got 4 board members present today. I believe there's apologies in from Karen Hunter.
Thank you. Item number 3, is there any declarations of interest from the Pension Subcommittee members? Nope. And item number 4, any declarations of interest from the Pension Board members? Nope. We'll go to item number 5, which is to approve the minutes of the previous Pension Subcommittee member. I'm happy to move. Yep. And item number 6, to approve the minutes of the Pension Board meeting of the 27th of September. Fine. Item number 7, we move on to the Investment Strategy Review update. Andrew, do you want to add anything to the report?
Well, basically, it's just an update on the position. Members received some training from Hymans Robertson last Thursday, 22nd. Hopefully that went well. I think there was a sort of common consent about the investment in the diversified income funds, so I just have to make a decision on that this afternoon. Again, the training on the various forms of passive management, which I think was members found useful. Whether they want to go into any further detail on that one today, I'm not quite sure. But again, if they're happy enough with that and happy to proceed with that, to agree to do that at the end of this item. With regard to the transfer of assets, they agreed disinvestment from the UK equities. We've given instruction this week to Legal and General to divest £35 million from the UK equity fund, which is approximately 4% of the fund at present, and that's being reinvested with Baillie Gifford in the Diversified Growth Fund as agreed on a temporary basis. We've also given instruction to switch the UK gilt fund mandate into the UK corporate bond fund, so hopefully that will be carried out on Monday. The legal and general funds are dealt with on a weekly basis, and then at the end of the month it tends to be whatever it is, the first day of the following month. So they've had instruction to deal that on Monday. With regards to property, we're still waiting to see any opportunities. I think the members are aware of the fact that to get into property is not quite as easy as into other investment classes. So we're just waiting to see if there's any opportunities, anybody selling units, etc., which are useful. And the other issue that's on this report is regarding the savings which have come from the passive management fees. It was raised at the last meeting that following on from the pooling operations in England and Wales, a lot of the passive managers had approached the Scottish funds to offer up the savings at which the English funds were getting as a result of the pooling operation. The table on page 21, no, sorry, yes, 21, shows that it's the first time I've had to do a table with 0.01% as a header, but it identifies what we were paying for the pooled vehicles and prior to January the 1st, 2017, and what the revised figure is. So, for example, the UK equity fund, we were paying 0.525% on the fund, and it's now reduced to 0.05%, although there's an included charge within the pool of 0.74, so it's actually going down to 1.124%. So the savings for that over the period from the 1st of January to the end of September are approximately 163,000. The other pool vehicles in total showing just under £259,000 savings since the 1st of January. And the equivalent figures for the full year in 17-18 is 153,000. Those figures are not the figures that are reported in the annual accounts, because the accounts also include other hidden costs within the pools which we're supposed to pull out. So they're less than what are shown in the annual accounts, because the accounts show the full cost of running the pool, which we're still incurring. But those are the savings which have been generated through the revised fee structure. So happy enough to take any questions that any members have got.
Any questions? Stephen?
Thanks, Chair. That was helpful, and it was just one of the last things you mentioned there was about the hidden costs which haven't been pulled out. I'm just sort of wondering, could we pull those out so we know what they are?
All managers are now asked to sign up to a transparency code, so that basically, as well as the costs at which we are paying, they identify all the costs of actually running funds, etc., etc., etc. I could show the figures which were used as a basis for the accounts for this year. I could certainly provide that information to members. Yeah.
Would that be possible to share with members on the committee, perhaps?
Yes. Oh, yes. We'll get that. Whether it makes any sense, I don't know, but it's.
We can try our best. Any other questions? No. We're happy to move to the recommendations then. We're happy to note 2.1, the current position on the implementation of the agreed revised investment strategy. 2.2, to agree following the appropriate training to invest in alternative income assets, and for Hymans Robertson to identify a range of suitable investment opportunities for the committee's consideration.
I just asked, is that a training that's already been undertaken on the 22nd?
Yes, the training on the 22nd was on the various classes of the within the diversified income funds.
Could I just ask, I had to leave halfway through that training, so I'm just wondering, will I be sufficiently trained to progress with discussion on that? I think I'd asked on the day, was it a requirement? But obviously it's good to be as best informed as possible, so I'm just conscious that I didn't attend the whole of the event, unfortunately.
I would think that the overall sort of view of the investment classes, hopefully you'd pick up sufficient from that to know what we're going to look forward to. The intention, if there's agreement to go into a fund, is for Hymans Robertson to identify 3 or 4 funds which meet our requirements on the infrastructure, private debt, long lease, etc., and to come back to the committee with these details of the funds, and possibly have a sort of beauty parade of the fund, of the managers of these funds, and then for the members to select an appropriate fund from that. I don't know if you want to add a bit to that, Joe?
Yeah, I mean, we'll produce a paper on these funds, and that'll give a kind of reminder of the background of the types of asset classes that they're looking to access. So that, that in itself should be sufficient to give you the background and the rationale for why we've arrived at where we are in terms of, bringing forward 2 or 3 funds.
Yeah, thank you. Would that also include those members, although they weren't at the training, I was at the training, but other members have actually received the same training package and went through the slides, would they also be allowed to be selected to make the selections? I
would say that if prior to the selection being made, I mean, as John says, that they're giving us an overview of the various asset classes, etc. It would give the members who went there a chance to raise a couple of issues. But like I say, they have access to the slides. So I mean, the training has been provided. The fact that they weren't already here, they should still be able to go through the slides and raise any issues which they feel.
Malcolm?
Thank you, Chair. I think potentially one of the people that John's referring to. I did go through the slides, but my understanding of this is that the pertinent point to have done the training is when we're selecting the funds rather than agreeing to look at the funds. So I don't really think it's an issue.
No, I agree with you. I think that the point was made that obviously people might have different levels of knowledge, and it's about the member themselves being confident and having that knowledge, and that is only individual members can make that decision. So we're okay to get back to recommendations. To agree 2.3, following the appropriate training, the use of multi-factor passive investments as suitable opportunities arise. David?
I could maybe just... Oh, thank you. Sorry about that. Not often in this chamber, and so I'm not sure how everything works. I just wanted to ask a question. I don't have any issues at all in terms of the report as it stands, but I want to ask about the timetable for doing this in relation to the next report we're going to be looking at, which is the potential, has the potential in it for a complete change to the way that the investments are managed. And I had a little bit of a concern that there might be some, can't think of the right word, commonality between the two processes that might be disadvantageous potentially. Could we get an idea of the timetable for moving this whole strategy forward?
The proposed timetable for these items here is to do a report with some recommended sort of income fund managers with a view to a beauty parade, possibly in February. On the equity arrangements, the plan is to bring a paper to the February committee saying how do we have the equities managed between, sort of Templeton or passive or factor-based. What's the plan going forward? I think what you're referring to in the next item is this whole sort of working together in some way of Scottish funds. Is that what you're referring to? I guess on that you just need to see how things develop over the months or years as to when any decision might be made. There's different options that they're thinking about, some of which might impinge upon the investments of the fund ultimately if they decide they want to pool your assets, but we're a long way from them making any decision like that, and I don't know whether they ever will. So, and if they do start looking at that, it's going to be quite a long period of time. So I'd caution against putting everything on hold until that whole process works its course.
I think certainly from my understanding that if they do decide to change anything about the investments, it could be 5-10 years before that actually pulls off. Is that right?
Yeah, I think even if they came to a decision that would impact on the investments, there would be a gradual phasing in or transition. So even at that point, we'd have time to think how it might affect things. But I think it'd be it's going to be quite a long, drawn-out process, and lots of the outcomes don't necessarily impact on the investments in these funds. Some of them do. It depends what the government decide to do in the end.
Okay, thank you. You managed to answer my next question as well in that, so that's great. Thanks very much.
Okay, so we're happy to agree 2.3. Yep. And 2.4, to note the investment savings from the revised passive management fee structure from the 1st of January 2017. Grand. Item number 8 is a consultation response on the review of the structure of the Scottish Local Government Pension Scheme, which we've touched briefly on. And did you want to add anything to the report?
Thanks, Chair. The members of the Pensions Committee were circulated with a sort of draft response, which we drew up on behalf of the Pension Committee. We tried to go through the consultation document and answer the questions on a fairly... We didn't take a specific view on what we think would be the best thing, but we answered it on behalf of how we think it would have impact on the Dumfries and Galloway Pension Fund and on Scottish funds as a whole. So we've tried to be fairly open in what we've said. We did ask for any comments from members, etc. We got 2 or 3 comments from the HR side with regard to the cooperation which exists at present between the Scottish funds on administration issues within the fund, so we've incorporated those into the report. We didn't put in a final recommendation. We felt that it would be for members to, having discussed the draft response to the consultation, to draw their own conclusions as opposed to 2 or 3 officers drawing a conclusion. But the one thing we do feel is that any sort of conclusion to the thing, if there's to be any change, it should be taken on the grounds of the ongoing success of the pension fund, and it shouldn't be a case of making change for change's sakes. But again, happy to answer any questions on what we've proposed to put through as the response.
I think certainly you've touched right note there. I think it's important as well in answering that question 5 that we have a line in about any change must be to the benefit of the pension fund and to its members, which is why we're all here. Does anyone have any comments they want to make on the consultation response or any views on question 5? Elaine?
Yeah, thanks. I've also seen COSLA's response because it's being discussed by COSLA leaders tomorrow. And I think certainly many of the concerns about some of the models are very similar in terms of what COSLA are saying in their response and what is proposed in our response, which I think indicates that there's that we're identifying the issues in respect of those. I know that COSLA favours option 2, which is retaining the 11 separate funds, but with increased collaboration where appropriate between the funds. That does seem to me to be quite a sensible position. I think there is the potential for the loss of local control with some of the other models, which I would feel sort of in terms of us that we would be subsumed into a large organisation where we would have very little control over the direction of investment. So my suggestion is that we retain the 11 with examination of increased collaboration where that is appropriate.
Thanks, but I think it's important to know as well what COSLA is saying. Jim?
Thanks, Chair. How much would further integration or pooling of funds reduce management costs? We have seen the management costs have fallen quite considerably. Is there further scope for these costs to go down?
The direct management costs from the pool vehicles have come down substantially as a result of England and Wales operation, as you could correctly say. There's not much more that they could cut off of that with regard to that's in the passive management side. Costs with regard to the active managers, I don't think there may be some scope there, but there's not a lot of indication yet from England and Wales that these costs are actually coming through. I mean, they're going through this big pooling arrangement, which they've been going through for the last 2-3 years, and there's a lot of costs being incurred. But I mean, it's one of these. Obviously, there would be costs at the start, but there's not a lot of proof yet that overall the savings which were anticipated to be generated are being.
Any other members have Any comments? So I think certainly. Sorry, David.
I'd just like to comment on the questions that are in the report at the end, which haven't been answered by the officers. I think they've asked what option you prefer. I think more appropriate to ask which ones we didn't prefer, because some of them are very similar, just with some bells and whistles attached. But the one that I think we definitely wouldn't want is to merge all the funds into one big fund. We've been to a lot of training recently that has involved this question, and certainly the conclusion I've drawn from the training I've been to is that there's not going to be a great benefit from an investment point of view in doing that, and the disadvantages of that would all, in terms of the Dumfries and Galloway Council, would all affect the administration processes of the fund, the ability of us to make our own decisions about the rates that the employer puts in to the fund, etc., etc. So I think the disadvantages of merging completely are need to be commented on in a bit of detail by us in terms of this. I'm kind of going against Unison's view here, because Unison's view nationally is that we should merge into one fund, but I don't think that is the right thing to do for Dumfries and Galloway Council folk.
I think certainly compared to the other funds, we're in a bit of a unique position where it is only one local authority, and it's only us as Dumfries and Galloway Council here that is speaking to some other pension funds. Quite considerable number of local authorities into the one. So for them, we can understand why they might think it's not a bad idea to have one pool. But you're absolutely right with the administration costs and that local control and accountability. Is anyone else wants to make any comments? So I think. So I'm just thinking of the recommendations. Are we happy to sort of approve the consultation, but also just to approve that? So our feeling is that if there was to be any change, our preferred option would be to option 2. Also, that any change would need to be in the advantage of the pension fund and its members, but also to try and include comments that we would be very sceptical and completely against sort of a merge of the funds into one or more new funds. Is everybody happy with that? Graham?
Yeah, there's only one reason you would merge into a bigger fund, and that's to cut costs. And according to what Andy said, England has proven that there's no cutting of costs, maybe an increase in costs. So there's absolutely no point in going down that route at all, as far as I can see. Better to keep it local. Yes, we have it's only Dumfries and Galloway, but that's fine. It's we can keep a handle on that.
Stephen?
No, thanks. And well, there's two things really. One of the positives that's been put forward in terms of operating is the reducing the key person risks in smaller funds. So this is in question 4 where it's talking about the operating risk. So if the only imperative is a financial one, then I don't think that's sufficient reason to do something, because it doesn't allow the flexibility for when situations change. So sort of local aspects provide that accountability and autonomy. But the key person thing is an issue, and we've seen this across the board in a number of different sectors, where succession planning is often a question that comes up when it's relating to the council's pensions, treasury, whatever it might be, and it's a serious sort of point, because if that resource isn't available to assist locally for whatever reason, then there is a case that that's something that could be considered. So I don't think I think there are other reasons why it might be considered, but clearly it's not sufficient in this case, I think. So I think we would urge against it, but I don't think it's completely black and white, because I think we're experiencing that issue as a region in terms of being able to have the skills and expertise to service what we need locally to operate stuff. The second point is, are we being asked here as members of the pension subcommittee to give a view on this, or is it the pension subcommittee and the pensions board's view which will be collected in terms of providing the response?
The response has been drawn up on behalf of the Pensions Committee. Obviously, there's a pension board meeting following this meeting. So if there's any amendments that the board would like to put in, then there's the opportunity to incorporate that into a board meeting. If there's no, I mean, if the board are in alignment with the committee, then we'll just do a single response. I mean, the consultation is open-ended. I mean, an individual can make a response if they feel strongly about the things, but the intention is for this response to be sent on behalf of the fund as a whole, basically, but in the first instance on behalf of the committee.
Thank you. Because I think I was listening to David and I actually thought, yeah, that's a reasonable position to take. But then I was thinking, yes, but actually he's speaking for the board, not the pension subcommittee. He's asking the question from that platform. So it was, how do we capture that input if it's the members of the subcommittee are meant to be given the response? But if it's, as you say, it's a sort of combined thing, so that's fine.
I was just ready to comment on Stephen's point about the key persons, and I think that's possibly the advantage of option 2, where there's cooperation and investing administration between the funds, so that if there is a lack of expertise in certain pension funds, that the capability to cooperate between funds, that could maybe overcome some of the problems if we don't have the sufficient people with the appropriate expertise. So I think that would be an argument maybe in favour of option 2.
And I think certainly, I know that officers have been thinking about succession planning, ensuring that, that we have a range of officers with the expertise required, not just now, but in the future. So we're quite happy to approve the response and for the comments that we've made to be incorporated into the response. Do you want to read out a couple of them? Just see what. I'll let you try. Ask Claire just to sort of summarise the points that we made.
Just to ask your pension expert here. Obviously, you're agreeing the response, but you're amending it to reflect preferred option 2. You've noted that this would align with the causal response. You've given it advantages of basically not merging, that your response needs to be for the advantage of the pension fund and its members, and you're basically against or noting the disadvantages of the merge of funds being sort of loss of local control, cost, accountability, but obviously noting that could be there's a need to maintain skills of officers locally to support. So, yeah.
Yep, David.
Thanks, Chair. It is a joint meeting, this, so I think it's appropriate for me to say that the board normally has a little discussion afterwards, and we might, certainly the recommendation I'll be making to the board is that we do put a separate response in. And the reasons for that, there'll be 2 particular reasons for that. One is to do with the investment advantages or disadvantages. Well, in fact, I'll explain what I'm saying first, and then we can work out whether it's an advantage or a disadvantage. At the training, it was made very clear to us that there are great advantages of having one big fund, but there are already some huge funds in the LGPS. We're quite a small fund, and when you look overall at the advantage of merging the few smaller funds with the bigger funds have already got all those advantages. So the additional advantage of bringing the smaller funds in is going to be negligible to the overall position. So that's the first reason for saying option 2 is better. And the other reason is the benefits of keeping local administration and control over what the employers actually need to do here in Dumfries and Galloway. So there's 2 particular reasons. And then the answer to question A, please explain your preference for that. So that's the discussion we'll be having later on. Thank you.
Okay, we'll include those as well. So is everybody happy with that consultation response? Great. We will move on to agenda item 9, which is the annual training plan. Do you want to add anything to the report, Andy?
Not a lot to add to the report. I mean, obviously, we're still encouraging members to undertake the basic training, which is the online pension regulators. There's still one or two who have to complete that. We may just, I think at the last meeting, we asked members to advise us if they would prefer a training session to be set up where we could go through it with a couple of officers to go through the pension regulator training with the members, and we would arrange a session maybe out at the Cargan Towers, etc., in the computer suite there where everybody can get. We haven't had much of a response to that, so what we might do is just book a session at Cargan Towers and advise members that it's been held, and ask those who have still to undertake the training to come along to that. Obviously, there's difficulties in arranging a suitable date that's covering everybody's availability, but we'll have to try and work our way around that. But it's something, like I say, we've just got to keep emphasising that the regulator is taking a bigger overview of how funds are operating these days, and one of the issues that they do look at is training. Some funds actually produce the training records of members, board members and committee members. These are published in the public domain. It's not something we do just now on a formal basis. Obviously the attendance at the meetings is recorded, etc. But it's in the light of the consultation, etc., we do feel that members should be seen to be taking the recommended training sessions so they have the appropriate knowledge and understanding of the operation of the fund. So the intention, this informal intention, is to try and arrange a session at Cargan Towers, book the computer suite there, and invite members to come along. If in the meantime, if anybody's got any specific issues, if they want to get in touch with us, then we can go over anything, or we can try and go over anything they feel that they may require a bit more discussion on.
Elaine?
Can I ask something? It's really about that Appendix 2, which is in the public domain because it's actually it will be published with the agenda for the meeting, so people will be able to see that. Now, I've done all the online training. I don't have time to go off to Edinburgh and London to do training, I'm afraid. Just with the other parts of the job, I don't have the time to do that. But we did have some training here from something that was cancelled. Now, there was a session in Edinburgh that had to be cancelled because there was problems with the trains, and we did it in the committee. Now, that's not showing up on that record, and nor is the training that some of us undertook last week showing up on the record. So it's not actually a genuine, factual record of the training that members have actually done. And if it is going to be in the public domain, I would, prefer that people's actual attendance is reflected in that.
The reason that the training from last week is not reflected in the report is that the papers are drawn up before the training, so that they will be included in the next.
But the training that was undertaken here because a train was cancelled and people couldn't get over to Edinburgh to do it, and then we got the slides and so on, that doesn't seem to be being reflected in this at all.
Oh, was that in the current year?
So maybe we need to emphasise that it's the current financial year. That's fine.
The other one is saying not relevant, not required. Now that rather suggests that the training we all did wasn't relevant. I'm sure it's not the case.
The stuff which the IGG is officer-based training, so that's why that's a big section that's blocked out there. The sessions for the overview, I think that's aimed at people who. There was a session 17, 18, which must have been covered. I'll have to have a check with Ross to see who's working on that one. But I would imagine when he's drawing this up that the officers, the members' bits that are blocked out as being not required or relevant will already have been carried out by those members in previous years.
Would it not be therefore more appropriate to describe it as already attended rather than not relevant and not required?
Yeah, I mean, I know there was going through a change in how this was being presented for this meeting, but I'll raise that with him. We'll get that sorted out, yeah.
Okay, David.
This is a complete disgrace. A total disgrace. If you include the vacancy, more than half of your pension subcommittee members haven't done the basic pension regulator training. Now, this was something that was brought to light about a year and a half ago, that there was a deficiency. We, or you, agreed that all the pension subcommittee members should undertake the training, and we've had effectively the same report in terms of that record of training issued as we've gone along. Last time it was reported upon, we were told, well, perhaps these folks have started the training but haven't quite finished it. And yet here we are with the same outcome again. So it's you know, I appreciate the officers have to be restrained, but from a pension board point of view, we certainly don't have to be restrained. We were told by the investment manager at a previous meeting that the rating for us as an investor of choice could be at risk if we didn't have all, you know, adequate training, etc. Now, I totally appreciate folks can't go to the other training. That's absolutely a given. You know, everybody's busy, everybody's got things to do. Not everybody can attend. But the basic pension regulator training, we're 18 months down the line and half the committee haven't done it. It's not good enough. Thank you.
Thanks for your comments. Malcolm?
I'd actually just like to come back on that. As I think mentioned by Elaine earlier, I'm marked in here on the pension regulator training as a grey box saying not required, relevant, and I definitely completed that training and I definitely informed you of it before. So
I think that, as I tried to explain, the ones in the grey boxes would be the ones who've completed it in the previous year, 17, 18. So it's not required in 18, 19. So the way it's shown is not correct. I mean, we say the ones who are blocked out in grey there are the ones who have completed the training in the previous year.
Stephen?
Thanks, Chair. I think just in response to Elaine's point before about, obviously we don't know when this snapshot was taken, so it might be helpful just to say record of training 2018-19 as at 10th of November, and then it's like clear that it might have changed since then, but at least we know when the picture was taken. The pensions regulator training, obviously the X's mark the ones that are still required to be done, and although it always looks better if they're all complete, I think it's fair to say, looking at that both the board and the subcommittee have a few folks still to carry out the training. So, I mean, the best way forward would be for everybody to carry out the training. You know, that's the sort of simple answer. But I think the disgrace is equally shared, if you like, between the board and the subcommittee, looking at that picture anyway. So, just to add that in.
Just like to respond to that. The pension board don't make the decisions on investments. It's the subcommittee that do that, and that's why it's particularly important for those subcommittee members to do the training. I think you need to be a little more forceful in terms of ensuring that folks do the training. You know, soft invitations to come along to meetings just ain't good enough now. We're 18 months down the line. I'd like you to actually be saying, as an outcome to this particular agenda item, that members must attend or must complete this training within a specific period of time. Certainly by the end of the financial year, I would say would be a reasonable expectation. I would hope that's a decision you'll make. Certainly the board, as chair of the board, I'll be wanting to raise this issue at the board meeting later.
Graham?
Yeah, I would like to put my tuppence worth in. I've been in this committee for 11 and a half years. And does the experience of being on the committee for 11 and a half years and not making too big an arse of it count for nothing. I'm not a great believer in qualifications. People have got their own talents and their own strengths and weaknesses. And having been here for 11.5 years, I think I've gained some experience, and I don't see why I should have to go through some training for something I already should know about, having been here for that length of time.
The experience of the members is something which we emphasised when we were doing our MIFID 2 return on behalf of the committee at the start of 2017, and that was something that was taken into account of. The benefits of the regulator training is not to try and teach you to know what you already know, but to try and identify any areas which you might not know, and just to get the relevant back understanding of that. I mean, it's not a case of saying all your experience counts for nothing. It counts for a lot, and I agree that experience is one of the biggest factors in running this committee. But it also, for the regulator training, it gives you the wide range of things which they believe are required to carry out the functions of the committee at the best possible level. The pensions regulator, the man with the big stick.
Well, if he's going to wield the big stick, I might not be here for much longer.
Any other questions? Yep.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I would like to put a further recommendation about the vacancy. We've had this vacancy since we started as well, since I started on the board subcommittee. And because it's a non-political sort of position, I think we should open it up to any elected member that wishes to put themselves forward to fill that vacancy.
The advice would be that the proportionality of the committee, like any other committee of the council, was agreed that full council, if there was a vacancy that isn't going to be filled by those arrangements, then it would be for full council to determine how that would be dealt with.
On that, that's an issue we have raised with the legal people, just to get an understanding of whether we can get any other member onto that in the long run.
David?
Just like to make another point, Chair. I appreciate I've maybe been very harsh in my comments, but we've just discussed a previous report where other folks are looking at the pension funds and how effective they are and whether or not they're doing a good job, etc. And you know, this is just a little bit of information and evidence they can use to do what they want to do rather than what we'd like them to do. So I think it is important that the points I've made are carefully considered.
Okay, we're happy to move to the recommendations. So I think we're being asked to note. We're only being asked to note, so we're happy to just note 2.1, 2.2 and 2.3. Yep. Jim?
Could we add that further additions require to be made? There are outstanding additions still to be made to the training plan. Because Elaine mentioned 2 training sessions, at least, which are not recorded on this plan.
Yeah, I think what Councillor Thompson mentioned earlier, if we put a record of training as at a specific date, you see, we couldn't record the ones from last week onto this plan because the papers were out prior to that meeting.
Didn't even notice. Are we happy to consider the adoption of the resolution to exclude the public from the meeting in terms of section 50A?